Friends, family, fans, it's the Rotoballer squad coming you hot and heavy on a Friday night, a little impromptu podcast kind of recapping our FSGA fantasy golf league that we are in. And we've got two different leagues that we're playing in. We've got Spencer Aguiar here at T of Sports and my main man and co-partner of our team, Joe Nicely. We're going to go through our two drafts that we did today and kind of share our experiences with what happened and share to you what we had some really fun things go down and some really disappointing things too. So we've got lots to talk to you about. Spence, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about your guys' Jason Day situation, and we've kind of made a joke about it, but welcome to my life with Jason Day. It's always something. There's disappointment one way or another, and you always expect one thing to happen, and all of a sudden, like, he should be on your team, and then he's not.
Exactly. That's how we're feeling. And we had an opportunity to get him. And between me and Joe Nicely, we let that Australian slip through our fingers. Joe, all things being considered, how are you this afternoon?
If the vertigo doesn't get you, the auto draft will. Just not meant to be with us and Jason Day, boys. That's all I know to say. Mistakes were made today. A lot of those are on me, but I think we battle back in the late rounds. We'll break it down. We got a pretty good squad. I think Spencer's sitting pretty over in the Augusta League. Byron and I are in the Sawgrass League, so it's going to be pretty fun. This is my first time actually doing season-long fantasy golf of any type, so it was a really cool experience. It was really fun. Would definitely recommend it to folks. You can jump over to Fantrax, create your own league, kind of do what we're doing. We're starting next week with Masters and running through what we run through, Spence, the BMW Championship. So it's really cool. We had a ton of fun today. Had a great group that we drafted with. So would definitely recommend it to anybody that's kind of interested in trying out season-long fantasy golf.
Yeah, and we'll kind of just go through. We got our two different leagues. We got the Sawgrass League, and then we got the Augusta League, which to me were two very interesting comparison names. But the Sawgrass League is the one that me and Joe were in, and we were picking second. And let's pull it up here. We've got our draft board that we've got here for you folks, and it's a little impromptu pod, so we don't have the best graphics. But if you can't see, take a squint, and we'll walk you through it anyway. So Scotty Scheffler by the Better Sports pod with Better Sports crew, which was the DB and Pat, who are part of the Tour Junkie.
I think the Tour Junkie boys were repping Better Sports Network.
Yeah, so they were repping that, and they had the number one pick, and we kind of expected off the board first, as it did happen not in the other draft. So that would have been an ideal. We've spoken a lot about the two different drafts, and we're going to kind of jump between the two, and my ADD is going to kick in hard, but it is a Friday evening, and it is what it is. So Scotty Scheffler went off first. Then we picked Jon Rahm in our second, which I think was a pretty simple decision to make there. I think between the two of them, it's 1A, 1B at this point. What do you two boys think about that? I'll go to you first, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, Byron, you and I are running a team together, so we had discussed this beforehand. We kind of felt like Scotty and Rahm were 1A and 1B, and we were content taking whoever was there. We were fairly certain that Scotty or Rahm would go off first in our draft, and we'd kind of already decided that we were just going to take who was left. I kind of brought up Rory. I think you'd make an argument. You'd maybe have to squint your eyes a little bit to make an argument for Rory with the way both Scotty and Rahm are playing. To me, if we were picking first, I think Byron. Would you agree that we would have probably went with Scotty Scheffler if we had the number one pick?
Yeah, I think Scotty's just provides that consistency. I feel like he's going to win a few more tournaments than Rahm this year. I just feel like when he's in the mix, he can get it done more than John. But that's just my, there's not much about. If you run the numbers on them, me and Spencer have been going back and forth about this. We don't really have a clear-cut winner in this department, I don't think. So, Spence, what did you think about the first three, the big three?
Well, I'll tell you this, like, if we're looking at Rahm and Scheffler directly, they were separated in my model by, like, the way I run it, it's less than 0.1%. So, I mean, they were essentially the same player. Obviously, you can't go wrong getting either one of the two. I do think Rory is the clear-cut third of the group there. And we talked about it a lot. Like, to me, there's a big three, there was a next three, and then there was everybody else. And In my draft, I'm sitting at the 108, and it played out a lot differently than anticipated. And a lot of players fell that I was not expecting to when we started to do it. But yours was much more standard when we started Scheffler, Rahm, and Rory than mine kind of went off just from the very beginning. And mine had its own problems. Like when you guys were in round 3 or round 4, we hadn't even started yet because we had to restart it 3 times because Taylor Montgomery got picked and then Theorborn Olesen got picked, and I don't know what was going on in my league.
I wish we could have restarted once Taylor Montgomery got picked in our league, but we will get there. So, yeah. So, are you pretty happy with? I mean, you had the 8th pick in your league, so we had John Rahm go first in yours, Scotty Scheffler second, Jordan Spieth third. Jordan Spieth third ahead of Rory McIlroy there, which is a little interesting of a play there from the better pool squad with TJ, Mark, and Thomas, but. Nonetheless, we had Rory go 4th, JT 5th, which is a little surprising to me as well from DFS Karma. And then Champions round. Geez, I'm butchering these names. I should have probably read them through before I got in here. But Champions round with Xander, with Steffi and Jason. And then the Bettle? Is that it?
Yeah.
Bettle Fantasy Sports with Dan and Ty. These guys weren't in our league, so I didn't know anything about these folks. But took Victor Hovland, and then Spence in 8th. Managed to snag Max Homa, dude.
Like Max Homa.
Yeah.
It was a tough situation. Obviously, I wanted Jason Day at some point, and I like looking at your guys' draft of him falling all the way to the end of the second round there. I think there's a world where I should have gotten him probably based off of that, but Jason Day's a top 10 player in my mind right now. Byron, you and I talked about that a bunch. The metrics show that with it. And when I said that there was a next 3 players, to me, those 3 players were Homa, Cantlay, Finau. And that's the order I had them in. The next one, I think, which is like the fringe for me where I would have taken him was Xander. I don't necessarily mind the Xander pick. I just don't know what the upside is for him in a season-long fantasy contest. You're going to get a lot of cuts. There is a missed cut penalty here, so that's fine with it. But very surprising on the Spieth pick. Once Spieth was taken, I knew somebody was going to fall to me, and I was fine if it was going to be Finau in that. And then all of a sudden, I was sitting there in a spot where Finau, Homa, and Cantlay are all sitting on the board, and I kind of had this idea in my mind where, oh my God, I might get 2 of these players somehow, and that was very short-lived after it went Cantlay and Finau with the next 2 picks. And when Day went off the board, it was a little crushing, but Cameron Young for me is right in that mix. Like those are the top 10 players, essentially. All those guys I just named. And then I think from there, you get another drop off.
Yeah. It's like you said, those first 3, then the next 3. And then you managed to get one of the next 3 at 8, which is awesome. And then old Len from RotoWire took Patrick Cantlay at 9, which is ridiculous.
That's incredible
as well. Like what a great pick there, or lucky pick, I would say in a way, because I mean, you got to deal with what you can. And then Encore Fantasy took Tony Finau at the turn with Colin Morikawa, a little double stack there at the U-turn there. And then
that's a pretty strong turn right there, Finau Morikawa.
Yeah. It's a bunch of dudes that are going to get you a lot of top 10s and 0 wins. At least in my opinion, Joe.
I think it's okay in this sort of a setup, though. I guess the one caveat that needs to be mentioned is we only start 5 players. We have 14-man roster spots. So you do need a little bit of upside at the end of the day here. It's not your standard 6 players playing. So like that might be the one downside to it. But I thought the last 3, including myself into it, I'm a little bit lower on Morikawa, I think, than the general consensus. But I want to say he was 11th in my model. So like from a value perspective, that's a fine pick there. And Len obviously did a great job going Cantlay and Day. I'm sure there was no world where he thought that was possible. One, he's going to expect me to take Day in the first round. Obviously, the board played out in such a unique fashion that didn't end up coming to fruition there. But I can't imagine there was any scenario where he thought Patrick Cantlay would fall to him at 9. So he got handed, like, Cantlay's the best value on the board. I don't think an argument can be made in that first round. He's a top 5 golfer that where did he go in your guys' draft? I assume in the top 5.
He went 7th, which is also, we had Morikawa and Thomas go ahead of him.
Yeah, it's interesting that he fell in both. Yeah. I guess like it's the lack of intrigue that people have around him, but When I got to Cameron Young in that spot, like it was a very easy decision for me. Young was the last player that I had inside my top 10. From a metric standpoint, I guess I worry a little bit with the short game and the putting. We can talk about the claw grip that he's incorporating now. We can talk about Tesori being on the bag. We know what he's done with Webb with his short game. And from a metric standpoint, if you just look at like total driving and the distance that he adds, and then he's second in my model in weighted proximity, that's a really fun combination of a golfer where I kind of think he might be in a spot where Scheffler was right before Scheffler went on that run. And I don't know if we're there yet to where the victories are going to come. We might be like a year away still, because I made this comparison to you, Byron. When he lost in the finals of the match play this is Scheffler, to Billy Horschel, it still took him a while from there. It took him like a year to finally get that victory, but you started seeing it come into motion. And in a league where I am trying to shoot for upside, at least in some capacity with it, Young to me could be a top 5 player in the world before the season's done. And we know what he's done in major championships.
Yeah. And the way he's playing golf and his consistency in these big events, he could be a top 5 player in the world without even winning a tournament.
Yeah.
The amount of top 3s he racks up, I think he's done another 2 this year. So love to see what he's getting up to. Joe, do you want to walk us through your thoughts on this part of the draft here? We got some Sungjae Im, Sam Burns, Cam Smith going at 6th in the second round. That was kind of early. We'll get to Cam Smith for our squad, but Willie Z and Dustin Johnson. We had 2 live guys going in the second round in your league, Spence, which is in my opinion, I think that's a little too early. There's a lot of still very premium players here that you can have playing all of these elevated events, because the live guys are only going to play 4 tournaments this year. So you got to pick your battles there. Joe, what are you thinking about what happened in the second round, Joe?
Yeah, man, this second round is just absolutely wild. I love it. It's absolutely wild. It's stunned that Cam Smith and DJ came off here. Honestly, stunned that Ricky Fowler did with the 9th pick of the second round. I mean, I think we certainly all agree Ricky's playing much better, but that feels like a reach to me. But with some of the folks left on the board, this is an interesting draft. I really, really wish that Byron and I could have found ourselves in this league. It's pretty nuts. We'll talk about a little bit more about Cam Smith in a second, but you're going to get these live guys for 4 events. So about roughly 25% of your schedule, which isn't nothing. And extra, I think there's certainly a line where you can take a shot on live guy. For me, it was kind of.
Did you lose them, Byron?
Yeah,
he's go live. So to see DJ and Cam both come off the board in the second round is pretty wild.
Yeah. Byron, just let me say one thing to that before we move into yours, because I like the point that Joe brought up, at least the point that I could hear of it there before it completely cut out. So the really interesting thing about this league, and when we had people drafting season-long contests at the beginning of the year, I mean, what are we in right now? Like 12 events, let's say, that have been played. We got to eliminate all of those, and now we're only talking about 17 events. You're going to get Cameron Smith and Dustin Johnson and some of those players for about 25% of the leagues, or for the weeks that you're going to have available to you. I just think at the end of the day, though, I mean, like, we don't need to go on and on about why it's too early. You're not going to have them for the playoff run. I don't know what's proper on it. Like, I think in a normal league, they were kind of going in like the 9th or the 10th round when the season started. I think you have to reduce that number a little bit, that you've removed 3 months from the equation here. Yeah. I don't know what's proper, but to me, anything that was going to be taken was probably too early. We'll talk about what you guys ended up doing a little bit later, which I don't mind there, but I mean, that's about the earliest that they should even be considered.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's in the back of my head was like 5th round. I want to pull the trigger on that. And I think 4th round for Cam Smith going into these majors, that doesn't take much to convince me about that. So I was totally okay with it. So, so one thing we have to mention here is that the league was set up in such a way that it was by total points accrued through the season so far. And the rankings were at like so backwards. I think Taylor
You are
Montgomery was the
welcome.
top. Yeah, thank you, Spencer. We thought we are going to have an edge, and it landed up biting us in the ass. So we really appreciate you doing that for us and setting up it that way. But in our draft, we had Taylor Montgomery at the top, and then if you got auto drafted, that's who went off first. And we were unfortunately a casualty of that because we had the second last pick in the second round, and we landed up going with Taylor Montgomery because I couldn't tell Joe who I liked soon enough, and between Joe and I, we managed to fumble the bag, and Taylor Montgomery went off the board and onto our team, and Jason Day went off to the Tour Junkies. So it was a very sad part of the draft. And then we had to quickly rebound after they took Jay Day and Siwoo Kim, and then we took Tyrrell Hatton there in the second pick of the third round, which I think was a good rebound. I think they were mentioning I listened to their show that they were doing hosting, and they wanted Tyrrell Hatton, I think, if we had taken Jay Day. So we kind of, split it there between the two of them. And I think they're both playing very good golf now anyway. So, Joe, how are we feeling about our turn here?
Tough, man. Tough. Really tough. You and I discussed it, Byron. We thought this would be a crucial part of the draft for us, and maybe we overanalyzed it a bit. We tried to kind of guess who was there. It really didn't shake out like we thought, I don't think. So there's a little bit of confusion. And as you mentioned, we were with two guys. You kind of want both people to be happy. So I was trying to kind of wait on Byron and just let the auto draft kick in. But yeah, it's not great. Definitely would have loved to have Jay Day there, especially the way he's playing. Taylor Montgomery, I feel like, it's one of those things where we could maybe kind of backdoor get lucky on it. He's going to play a lot throughout the summer, going to play a lot of these regular events, and he's been playing really well. So he's certainly a player that's on the upswing. I mean, we can kind of cross our fingers and hope that it's going to work out for us. But certainly would have rather had Jay Day there. As you mentioned, I love how we rebounded with Hatton. Prefer him over Siwoo there. Kind of surprised to see the Tour Junkies let Hatton slide by. You can make the argument he's not had much success in the Masters, but that's one event of 14. Of course, obviously we like him in the Scottish Open, the British Open when we start getting that stretch of the schedule. So I really like how we rebounded with Hatton there on the turn. But yeah, certainly my bad. There's some players going after Hatton that I like. Byron and I had talked before the draft. I really like Tommy Fleetwood. I really like Corey Connors. We were talking about him before this Valero Texas Open, and obviously he's going out and playing well. So that kind of makes me feel a bit better about liking Corey Connors. But I wouldn't take any of those guys over Tyrrell Hatton. So I like where we are there in the third round after the ugly incident of the second round.
Yeah, it was a bit of a train wreck. But, if you gave me Matt Fitzpatrick or Taylor Montgomery, I think I would still take Taylor Montgomery, just out of the straight birdie making potential that he has. So, Spence, have you got a take on our train wreck? Do you want to be the jaws of life and clutch us out of the situation here to redeem our self-confidence and belief in our ability to be apt, fantasy drafters?
So I guess let's start with the Montgomery pick, since that's the elephant in the room here. He's 21st in my model from the way I ran it for this sort of a league setup. I think it's a fine pick in a vacuum situation. I'm okay with it. Obviously, I don't even know what I would have done. I would have tried to jump through my computer to try to make a Jason Day pick. I would have been calling the FSGA to pause the draft. You have to give us Jason Day. There's no way this is continuing at that point. Obviously, that's a bit of a homer answer, but it's not at the end of the day, because he is a top 10 player in my model when we're looking at 2023 only stats with the way I ran it. And that kind of leads me to the Tyrrell Hatton point that I want to bring up. So that's amazing value on Hatton, where he slides too far in your guys' draft. I don't remember where he went in mine, but I had him a top 15 player. And if I'm looking at just 2023 stats, he was a top 8 player for me. So I think Hatton is a legitimate. I guess he went in the same exact
same
spot.
So it's value on both.
Montgomery went one round later instead of.
So interesting thing with the Montgomery thing in our league, just to throw it out there. So I had all my players queued, and I'm sure most people did in the league. When our league started, Montgomery and Olesen went off the rail. it ended up pulling all the players off our queue. So it took me like an extra round to realize, oh, wait, Montgomery's been thrown back in the pool. He's no longer on my player queue at this point. And I think that happened to a lot of people, which I would say that's one of the reasons why in ours he fell as far as he did.
Hey, I will say this. We're actually kind of fortunate that it was Taylor Montgomery
100%.
because it would have been whoever was at the top of those rankings. So
it could have been. It could have been Kevin Yu.
That could have been auto drafted for us. So I mean, I guess, and if we're trying to find a silver lining, you know, at least as a guy we all kind of like, and not some totally random player that had auto drafted for us.
Yeah, I think you guys probably, other than Jason Day and Terrell Hatton, which you guys ended up getting Terrell Hatton. Well, maybe I'd have to look at your guys' board if you can bring it up, Byron. But I would assume you guys got. I mean, maybe I would take Tom Kim, I guess, over Montgomery. But you guys got one of the best options you could get, so that's fine.
It was the best worst case scenario. We'll put it at
100%.
that and kind of keep on scooting down. Anyone that you guys see in this third round, scooting all the way, you know, let's actually go to yours, Spence, so we can make you back to the 8th, and then we can kind of discuss what you did in your third round pick here. You like Tom Kim, so you managed to get him at 3-8 in your draft with Sahith Theegala, Hideki Matsuyama, Siwoo Kim, Aaron Wise. Oh boy, did you see his post about kind of taking some time off about golf? Literally came out while we were doing this draft.
Yeah,
so this person with CBS Sports for Josh. Oh man, talk about a bad beat, dude. Like that's the timing couldn't have been much worse. Like literally, probably as he clicked that button.
Yeah.
Aaron Wise said, you know, he's taking some time off from golf, which is good. You know, you hate to see a guy like that struggle on the tour, especially with that much talent. So I hope he comes back firing. But yeah, Tom Kim in the third 8 there. So what were you thinking there? What was your thought process? You think he's going to start bouncing back this year after a bit of a slow start to the year?
I don't know what to think about him at the end of the day. To me, this is just a situation where I'm going to grab the talent of if this draft would have been held 2 months ago, he's probably going in the early second, maybe the late part of the first here. So I'm just going to take a value number that I have here. And my model still likes him. Like obviously there's some concerns when you look at this from a metric standpoint that we've seen recently with him, but I was kind of surprised to see him drop this far. I mean, that's what the 28th pick in the draft. I still think he's a top 20 talent, no matter how you want to shake this. Like you can put him behind the Spieths, the Burnses, whoever you want to talk about in that range. But like he is in that next group for me where like he's very close. Yeah, I mean, like he's kind of in that range of the Will Zalatoris's and all of those players. So I just thought it was a good value position there. And you know, I've been a big proponent of Aaron Wise, obviously. So I don't know if I would have taken him that early, but even still, that's a bad break there. And like we had weird situations in our draft. Like I want to say our third round for the most part, other than the Wise pick, which backfired, probably still a little bit too early anyway. But the Lowry pick, I don't necessarily love either. But other than that, I'm fine with every other pick that was made in the round.
Yeah. If there's 2 guys that I would have loved to have had to pick that I've got insane belief in their upside this year, it's Sahith Theegala and Kurt Kitayama. I just really think, you know, those are 2. I think Joe's and I's philosophy in our draft is also why we had some issues. Is Joe's like really leaning towards guys that are like tried and tested, real prove it guys. They've done their thing. You know what you're going to be getting from them. Where I was kind of, I'm stuck on this trending tab that I have in my model where I want to see these guys that are moving up, you know, in the right trajectory, even though they might not be where Justin Rose is right now. And I think Sahith and Kurt Kitayama are 2 guys that are just really going to make some noise. You know, they've got explosive gameplay. You know, there's a lot that you can get from them. And Kitayama is someone that he's not a household name. You know, he's not a very popular player. So I really like Len's pick there. I love what he's been getting up to. Like Len's team's looking pretty stacked right now.
Len crushed it. A lot of value fell to the back end of this draft for various reasons of what occurred. But like I was sitting there at the 308. And so when Hideki went off the board, which Hideki was on my short list, I think he's another player that at some point might be able to turn around. I don't know where his injury concerns are. Obviously, you have to worry about that. But I'm kind of okay at taking shots more so than most people in these spots. But when Hideki was taken off the board, in an ideal world for me, and it was probably a pipe dream with it, I would have liked to have gone Tom Kim and Sahith coming back. Like that was my optimal game plan of the way to play it there. And obviously with the way it went, Sahith going off the board. So I took Tom Kim. Kitayama to me is a top 35 type player. I think the value's fine there. You talked about the upside that he has. I like the Justin Rose pick. I think Hoagie's really good value there at the 401. Hoagie was a top 25 player for me, how I ran it. Kirk is fine. I was then sitting in a spot where, like, to me, there was kind of a gap once Mitchell was taken, once I took him off the board. So he was like my last player that was, I mean, I guess you could say Keegan Bradley would be the last player, but those were like the last tier of the top 25 guys for me before we all of a sudden started moving into the Wyndham Clarks, which, I mean, and the Ricky Fowlers and those guys. I mean, Ricky Fowler was already off the board at that point, but that was kind of how I had it broken up.
Yeah. No, it's really cool because it's all about your own perspective on these clumps of guys, right? And where you draw the line, where you think's got the most upside, what your philosophy is about players, Joe. And I mentioned that you like to lean on guys that are a bit more proven over the long course. Talk to me about, like, let's share a little bit of your strategy there, and because we got two very differing opinions, on where we wanted to go with. Why are you a big fan of guys that have shown what they can get up to versus taking a bit of a gamble? I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's not that I'm opposed to young guys. I mean, I've for a long time been a proponent of kind of trying to hop on these guys earlier rather than later. But in this particular structure, we're not talking about a 1 week DFS structure. We're talking about a prolonged several month, I think 14 tournaments, Spencer, schedule that we're playing. And when you look at where this stretch falls on the schedule, I mean, these are big boy golf tournaments. I think a lot of these young guys, we can circle to Tom Kim, played really well at the end of summer, won at won at Sedgefield, very short golf course, pretty watered down field, won in Vegas. A short golf course guy like Kevin Na played well there. Pretty watered down field. Certainly not like the type of fields that he's been playing so far this year, not the type of fields he's going to see throughout the summer, and much shorter golf courses than he's going to see throughout the summer. Tom Kim's averaging less than 300 yards off the tees, guys. I think he's like 122nd driving distance, and it's not that he's not a fine player. But there's some issues there. I feel like when we start talking about some of these major championship layouts, and some of these longer golf courses that he's going to play. I was actually in agreement with you, Byron, on Sahith Theegala. Really liked him. Would have been comfortable pulling the trigger. I just don't think it was ever going to. I don't think he was ever going to fall to us where we were.
I know.
He went in the middle of the second in our draft.
In ours, and then he was 3-7.
Whereas in Spencer's, he fell all the way to the third, I guess the 3-7, where he went in the middle of the second on ours. So that was a guy that we never really had an opportunity to take. But yeah, just kind of circling back around, I like these proven guys kind of in these big boy golf tournaments. Young stars are great, and I really like playing them, especially a talented guy like Theegala or Tom Kim. But we've also seen these guys kind of have ebbs and flows to their careers as they're finding their way on the PGA Tour, where these more proven guys, a Corey Connors, a Tommy Fleetwood, a Shane Lowry, guys that maybe aren't showing the best form yet. It's guys that I feel like are kind of going to be there as the season progresses.
Let me ask you this really quickly, Joe. So let's talk about Tom Kim for one more second. Where would you have felt comfortable taking him?
I don't think you're off where you grabbed him, Spencer, especially how your draft kind of played out. Can you pull Spencer's draft back up there? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really solid spot for him, Spencer. I think round 3, round 4, depending on kind of how things played out, is perfectly fine for Tom Kim. Byron and I were talking about some of these younger guys, and I think getting him in the third is perfectly fine. Yeah,
to me it felt like fringe back end of a second, front end of the third was probably proper value for him. So once he started sliding a little bit further than that, I ended up pulling the trigger for that reason.
Yeah, I think that's a great spot. I mean, it's probably a toss-up for me there between Theegala and Kim. And it looks like Theegala came off the board right before you. So Kim's a great spot there in the third. So I like him a lot in the third or the fourth. I think second's a little bit too early for me. But it also depends on how your board kind of shakes out.
Yeah,
So
the Gall and Kim were back to back with me in my rankings, so it
Yeah.
kind of goes to your point there.
Yeah. I just want to pull this is Tom Kim's data golf stuff. And I had this weird thing that I think if you take a look at what happened last year, if you take a look at this distance, like it's pretty significantly less than like the field average, right? And then you take a look at what's happened this year since we pretty much come back from January. It's been average to he's had a few where he's like snuck ahead on the field by like 1 or 2 yards. So I don't know if his play, like, and this is when it all stopped being good. Either he got to tough golf courses that have caused him some issues, or I think he might be trying to say, look, I've won 2 tournaments on tour, and those are courses that I can definitely do that on again. But if I want to be the best in the world, I probably need to change my game around a little bit. And we haven't seen a drastic change in his distance off the tee, but you got to imagine that has been a discussion with him and his team. Do you think he's trying to put on some distance and that can potentially, like, look at his approach play. It's been so freaking solid. And then kind of where you start seeing some pops in distance, that approach play is kind of fallen down. That can like typically happen after you've changed your swing, trying to speed it up, gain some power. I don't know. I'm just trying to put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, I'm probably clutching at straws, but that's something I've been thinking about. Do you guys have a take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right with that. And I mean, at the end of the day, too, he's a young player that's going to go through ebbs and flows with his game. Like I said, if you would have held this draft 2 or 3 months ago, he's like a fringe first round pick. You don't have to look any further than what we've seen with Justin Thomas recently and some of these guys. There's just going to be good and bad that you have with them. And I have never been the biggest proponent of Tom Kim, which is funny because I end up drafting him every single time because he falls further than I guess what I think is proper there. But I still believe in the talent. And at some point he probably gets this back on track.
Yeah, I hope so. Anything to add there, Joe? Or are you kind of in agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I like the kid's talent a lot. I'm certainly not picking on Tom Kim. My viewpoint's a little bit more in general with younger guys, and when they're having this success, and the other players that we're measuring them against. Phil's at the end of summer, Phil's in the fall, just aren't as strong. So in my eyes, that, yes, obviously you got to be a very talented golfer to win on the PGA Tour. I think Tom Kim is a very talented golfer that's going to do really well. But I also think there's an adjustment period when you kind of start swimming with the big boys and you're playing on these longer golf courses. So he'll be fine in the long run. But for me, as I said, in this specific thing that we're doing with this schedule, I'm just a little bit more comfortable with guys that have been there.
Yeah, and we'll move on past that. I think one of the interesting things, though, just to add really quickly, obviously I make my own rankings. I'm not going to listen to what Data Golf says necessarily, but he is lower on Data Golf's rankings than you would find at a lot of places. Like I think he's 24th overall, talking about the best player in the world. So they kind of agree that they've never had him high from the numbers I've seen. And like, I think that's probably one of the things that everybody witnesses out there when they go look at that site.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got his limitations, right? So.
Yeah, if we do want to start talking about, zeroing in on specific guys, Tom Kim's got a couple wins on the PGA Tour. Cameron Young has none. Who would you rather have going into this stretch of the season on these golf courses? Those wins kind of fade away when we start really getting down to the nuts and bolts of what makes guys successful, in the biggest tournaments against the toughest competition.
Sure.
Yeah. No, that's valid. And, Cam, boy, those top 9 top 3s since since 2022. Ridiculous stuff. I did love how Justin Rose's flag was South African in our draft, and then English I guess if you take him in round 3, he's an Englishman, and if you take him in round 4, he's a South African, which was quite funny to me.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. We had some crazy stuff going on. We had a Scott Stallings mix up. we had a South African Justin Rose. There's some crazy stuff going on.
Mito's the first live guy off the board in your league.
Mito comes off the board before Cam Smith in round 4, which was an absolute out of left field bullet there, which I thought was hilarious. And And he's like, you know what? I just like his game. And I didn't want to like mention, he's playing only 4 rounds, right? Like 4 tournaments this year, but maybe he had a good reason for it. So I don't really know there. I'm a big fan of Seamus Powers. I think he's going to do great things at some point, but I did love our Cam Smith pick. We kind of lost our ace for the big events because Taylor Montgomery isn't going to be playing in the Masters unless he wins this week, which I don't think he's ever going to win a tournament, but that's besides the point. I think he's always going to be top 10. But Cam Smith, he's absolutely live to win Augusta. And the other majors, I think he's absolutely live too. Not as much, but we got an ace in the hole for Augusta already, and we don't have, in the second round that we grabbed there. So I love what you did there, Joe. I was on the radio with the Tour Junkies when this was happening. So you kind of got me all excited about him on there once I finally realized what happened. And then they took Chris Kirk, JT Post, and then we took Billy Horschel. So we had a bit of salt and pepper there. Cam Smith, elite talent, and then Billy Horschel. If he starts bouncing back, I think, which he does, especially playing on those tougher courses, I love Billy Horschel's talent. So walk us through your 2 picks there and tell us why you liked them.
Yeah, man. I mean, I honestly kind of had Minwoo Lee in mind, and I honestly kind of had Adam Scott in mind, and both those players came off the board before it got to me. I felt like Cam Smith was by far the best player left in this thing. I felt like the 4th round was not an unrealistic place to take a guy that could, that I would argue is probably a top 5 favorite next week. Maybe a top 5 favorite at the British Open, and could certainly play well in the US and PGA Championships. So with a couple of the other guys that I kind of had an eye on gone, I feel like it's a kind of a very surgical strike type of weapon that we're only going to be able to use 4 times, but it's a pretty strong outlet when you can roll Cam Smith out. And then Billy Horschel, not a player that I'm huge on. You guys know this. But kind of circling back around to a tried and true vet that we know is going to be playing a lot. We know he plays a pretty full schedule. We've seen him perform well. Won at Memorial last year, so I think he's a veteran that knows how to get things straightened out, and I think he will as the season progresses. So I'm not over the moon with the Horschel pick, but when you start looking at the guys kind of surrounding that, I think it's okay.
Yeah. You've got a better lean on him than I do, and that's fine. I think in this range, you're not going to sell me on anyone, this is where it gets muddy. So absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah. I really like Dietrich. I feel like he's a player that's coming on. I don't know if he's a stretch there where we took Horschel, and Adam Hadwin's a proven player as well. But, I think Billy Ho's okay there.
Yeah, and I think Dietrich's availability in the big events, I don't think he's a Corn Ferry Tour qualifier, so I don't know if he's going to be playing these big events.
Yeah, that's something you also have to take into account. You know that Billy's in all the majors. You got to feel like he's going to be in the playoff events. So that's kind of another check in his box.
Yeah. Speaking of Dietrich, Spencer took him at 5'8" in his draft, which had Joaquim Niemann go in 5th. Cam Smith was in the 2nd there. Still, is DJ off? Yeah, he was in the 2nd. So those 3 live guys are out there. Seamus Power, Russell Henley, and then Thomas Dietrich. And then, walk us through your turn now. I do like how we're on the 2 different sides. We're kind of just bouncing across the 2. So talk about your side there in 5'8" there, Spence.
So I wanted Seamus. That's what I was hoping was going to fall to me. And I was going to go Seamus and Dietrich and be very happy with that turn there. I don't know if it was Jason Gold or Steffi. They ended up making the pick. So unfortunately, I didn't get him. But I like Dietrich. There's going to be problems on what events he can get into. And I don't know what his upside necessarily is, which the funny answer to that is I don't really know what the upside for my next pick is either when we talk about Ben Griffin. Those are 2 players that I kind of question what we're going to get out of them as far as winning golf tournaments, but I'm okay with it. Like I keep saying, I want cup makers. I want guys that are safe, and I'm trying to find guys that are going to play a lot of these events that are going to be some of the smaller ones. Like, to me, I already have the top end of my board at least figured out with Homa, Young, Kim, and Mitchell. I'm going to probably be plugging them in to all of these elevated events, and I'm going to need players that are playing some of these other tournaments. And Dietrich and Griffin, you don't have to look any further than this week with them. They're, mid to upper $8,000 golfers for this event. And I do think you're going to get a lot of situations like that for 2 guys that have been very steady with making cuts so far this year.
Dude, and that's a really great point that you made. Is I was thinking about this while driving to Subway earlier. Is you need to almost pick bad golfers early that are going to be the best golfers in the bad events. Because if you have 10 studs that are all playing in elevated events, I mean, 10 might be a bit of a stretch, but if you have 7 or 8 studs that are playing those elevated events, you're out of luck when it comes to this week. Like the Valero, basically, and the week after Harbour Town and stuff like that. So that's a great strategy, Spencer. I love what you did there. I'm very jealous that Kuchar went all the way down here at 6'2" as well, which is interesting. But I think he's one of those guys that'll be in those weaker field events too, which is
yeah. I know I keep saying how great Len did, and I don't want to keep giving him props because he stole my picks, but I think the sub pick is great. I think the Kuchar value is really good. Like, he's really, if you look at his team in particular and you look at those 6 rounds there, I don't think he made any glaring mistakes. It's a very solid, consistent team with upside to it. So Len kind of destroyed those 6 picks that he made.
Yeah, no,
which I'm fine with mine too, but there was I got the better end on some of them. I got the worst end on some of them. And I mean, that's kind of the nature of the business. And I felt like I don't think I was necessarily stealing his picks because he never mentioned anything in the Zoom chat that we were having together, but like every single time he stole from me, I let him know that he had stolen. So I think there was a lot of he was taking players that were very up there on my big board or the highest up on my big board when he grabbed them. So, I mean, hard to say anything bad about what was going on. And the same thing with the guy who picked last. I think it's really good picks in Adam Hadwin and Brendan Todd. I thought the 3 of us kind of were strong with most of those turns that we were talking about there.
Yeah. I mean, Brendan Todd's looking like he's exactly what you're looking for in these second tier events. He's right at the top of the leaderboard right now at the Valero, which is perfect stuff there. Love what he got up to. Let's scoot on down this ranking here all the way to Minwoo Lee at 6'9", Joe. God damn, this draft was so nice. It was just if only. So Minwoo Lee went 2 rounds earlier than we did. We landed up okay. So stats perform the womp of our draft when Aaron Wise, Daniel Berger. Now I don't know what Daniel Berger's rarity is, if he's medium rare or partially cooked right now, but I don't know if he's going to be on a plate anytime soon. So he's got 2 guys there in the first 6 rounds that potentially aren't going to be playing golf for a little while, but he's also got a guy that's going to be playing in every single event as in Sung JM. So he's okay there. He's made up some ground. We then went with Svensson. Joe, was there anyone that got snagged before there that you had your eye on, that we had our eye on? I know that I liked Svensson. I think
Justin Suh was a guy I was hoping would fall. Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. I like Svensson. Great ball striker. We're going to see him play a lot throughout the summer. I was kind of hopeful that Justin Suh might fall, to later round, and we could maybe snag him there. One of those younger guys we talked about, Byron, that's kind of trending in the right direction. And some solid players came off the board in front of us. Denny McCarthy's played well, but I'm very happy with Svensson there, and I think I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit more. But I think one of our favorite picks of mine is Taylor Moore.
That's probably the best value in the draft. I've seen
I mean,
so
I
far,
think that's just I think that's just a slam dunk. As far as talking about a guy that won. So, I mean, he's getting in the majors, been trending in the right direction, just been piling up like top 20s and top 15s left and right. So, I mean, I think we really bounced back kind of as this draft played out. It's not sexy. And I think it's something Spencer and in his league, Lynn also did, just piling up best available. And I think that's a really solid strategy when we're talking about a season-long fantasy league and something that kind of played to our advantage. Probably Byron and I probably being a little bit more familiar with some of the guys down the board probably helped us late, hopefully, to over. Really happy with Svensson and Moore there. You got any thoughts on those two, Spencer? What are you thinking about Taylor Moore?
Yeah, so Taylor Moore for me was a top 40 player in my model. That's insane value where you guys got him. I believe he went earlier than that in ours. And then Svensson was a top 45 player for me. So I agree. I'd probably rather have Justin Suh for trying to decide between them, but we're in the same range of those players there. So I think for what you guys had available, those 2 picks were knocked out of the park.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Taylor Moore, he's one of the guys that's absolutely trending the hardest out of everyone in this model I put together over the last 150 and 24 rounds. You know, like his stuff is just starting to like take off right now. And like you said, winner, he's in. And he went in round 5 of your draft, Spence, which is, you know, it shows us getting him in round 7. We got lucky there too. And I think that was a great play for us. So
I think round 5 was good value on him for where he went in ours. I mean, I'm sure like he was on my short list in a lot of those spots. He's just going to be behind Dietrich and Griffin for me, but he was kind of right in that next tier. So very, very good value.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you went with Steven Yeager and Adam Scott at the turn for you in round 7 and round 8. We had Adam Scott go off right before who. So it's kind of interesting.
Scott's a steal there.
Yeah. So Spence, walk us through Scott there.
Yeah, Scott's just value. Like that was kind of like Joe said it best. To me, it was just take the best player available in a lot of these situations. And I didn't necessarily go into a draft ever wanting Adam Scott or thinking I was going to get Adam Scott. We see in yours, he went at the 408. In mine, he goes at the 803, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
It was just too many rounds down there. And I actually thought when I passed on him and took Yeager that Len was going to take him because I'm still in a spot at this moment of my draft here. And it's at least running through my head. I only have 4 players for the Masters at this moment, which it's fine, but we're also getting like live heavy at a certain point. And I'm not going to take a live player. So I'm kind of sitting here at this moment trying to figure out, well, if I don't get Adam Scott, what do I want to do with that last pick? And I decided I liked Yeager's, like to me, Yeager and Justin Suh are 2 golfers that I don't know if we've necessarily up until recently gotten the best from them. Those were 2 guys that I thought had legitimate upside to make runs and become, you know, top 25, top 30 sort of players. And we've kind of seen it recently with Suh. We've seen it kind of hit and miss with Yeager with it, but they're 2 cut makers that are getting themselves to the weekend. And at some point, if they can just put it all together, I wouldn't be surprised if they win one of these lower tiered events. So I was happy to have Yeager as that option for me in those smaller events. And then, yeah, Adam Scott is just a value situation. Like if we're talking about 4 rounds of difference there, and I do tend to think that in the 4th round of your guys's, that's kind of still way too early for him. To me, the 6th round, give or take, somewhere in that range would probably be what I had accurate. But like in mine, we're now talking about 2 rounds of value that I didn't anticipate happening.
Yeah, and check, they're sitting 55th and 54th there, which is awesome. And you know that's right next to each other. Which I think you stole those 2 in round 7 and round 8, where we got them ranked inside the top 55 each. So that was very nice on your part there. Russell Knox is an interesting play in round 8. That guy's Mr. Absolutely no upside.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. Just in my opinion, like you can make your own stake on each guy. Scooting on down to our guy, we took Taylor, then we went and took Matt Wallace as it came back to us, which I heard, I was re-listening to the Tour Junkies and them, and they were not happy that we took Matt Wallace, which I think, Joe, that was the majority of your decision there, and I love him. Like he's
man. I was super happy to get Matt Wallace there. I mean, I was ready almost to take Wallace where we took Svensson. I mean, that's how much I kind of like Matt Wallace with the way that things were shaking out. So I was very excited to grab him there.
We also have to say, right before you guys, Steven Stallings Jr., that looks funky on there.
So what happened with that is this was Lauren from RotoWire, and she clicked Steven Stallings Jr. instead of Scott Stallings. So that was a mistake on her part, but we landed up boycotting the whole thing and saying we'll just give you Scott Stallings, and then the Tour Junkies ended up taking him around 10. So that's still kind of a situation that's being worked out right now. It was a bit of a sketchy part of the draft, but they were not in the Zoom. They were busy being big boys and hosting their own show. So they weren't part of the unanimous decision that we made and boycott on the site. So that's their loss. They'll figure it out and we'll take care of business there. And then they took Morong Benny on. And then I suggested to Joe we take the best putter in the world over the last 36 rounds in the 9th round. Like Sam Ryder right now is putting lights out, folks. He gained another stroke yesterday, so he's adding to that total. Like he's just gaining over a stroke per round every single time he goes and plays golf. He's a very good ball striker in general. I have him on a trajectory to the moon. You know, like if he can get his ball striking figured out, which he's typically done, and you see sometimes these golfers where they one aspect of their game like picks up, there's another aspect that kind of gets the back seat while they've probably been working on their putting. Now, if he can keep that putting going and get back to the ball striker that he was, I think we're in good shape. I love Sam Ryder. I know you probably aren't nearly as high on him as I am, but
No, I like Sam Ryder. So where was he in your model?
I have no idea. 49th. So
47th for me.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And I mean, look at this trajectory. Yeah. You know, like over the last 100 to the last 20. And I know it's the putter, but it's been nonstop consistent stuff, which I love about that. You know, it hasn't been just a one hit wonder and bad now and then good and bad. It's good. So it's all good. I love what's going on there. Grillo, got to shout him out there. Joe, Sam Ryder.
Yeah, I really like Sam Ryder. Had Byron kind of suggested Ryder there, and I was all for it. He's a guy that, you know, over the past couple of years, he's one of those guys that hadn't found that consistency yet. For me, just speaking kind of in personal terms, he's a guy that's been a first round leader bet for me a lot. That you know, a guy that you know that can pop for a low round. He's a guy that you love, you know, grabbing at value on DFS slates. So I like the consistency he's starting to show. He's leveling out a little bit. Really liked what he showed at Torrey. Played some big boy golf out there against some big time competition, hung tough. So yeah, man, I was 100% with Byron on that one. Really liked the kind of the trending form of Sam Ryder there.
Yeah, like look at this approach play.
Yeah, one of the most interesting picks is right after you guys, Cameron Tringali. So that's a golfer that's going to get 0 starts. So I don't know about that.
We had a couple of Mito Pereira went off the board really early.
Yeah, that Tringali one is an interesting pick.
Yeah, no, we'll. Lauren had a few. She started going a bit live crazy in the bottom of her draft, but you know what? I think she was going off the rankings from the previous year, which doesn't quite help. So a little bit of love there for her was all we needed. That's why we kind of went with the Steven Stallings. Give her back there.
The thing is too is a lot of these players like for her in this spot, I'm sure there's going to be enough players that she can drop and she'll be able to fix them on the waiver wire. So it's not necessarily, I see it in the chat right now about Tringali, which is pretty fitting there. But no, I you'll be able to roll them over. It's fine.
Yeah. And if for those of you watching that doesn't know the inside joke, it's commonly known that Sia Najad and Cameron Tringali have never been in the same room at the same time. So it's neither confirmed nor denied that they are the same person or not. So thank you for joining the chat there, Cameron Tringali. We appreciate your support of the show. Scooting on down to Spencer's draft here, we had Sam Ryder went off in 9-2 in both drafts, which is another interesting situation. That's kind of funny. Robbie Shelton's another guy I have big aspirations about, but then Spence went and took Will Gordon and Gary Woodland, some WG guys there with the initials. So talk to us about your 2 picks there, Spence.
I think I have a sickness with Taylor Pendrith. I was kind of hoping he was going to fall to me and I was going to just use him as my boomer bust option. And I agree with you. I also like Shelton. Like those were probably the 2 players that I wanted in that moment. But Gordon to me was a top 50 golfer, at least when I ran my model. I don't know if I necessarily trust him, but we see him hit and miss in these spots. And I'm kind of at the point now where I have so much safety that there's going to be events in some of these smaller events where Will Gordon is going to probably be an $8,000 golfer. So I liked him in that situation. And then Gary Woodland is a unique piece. I don't know where he went in your guys's. I would assume it's probably earlier than this. You're going to get him at the majors. You're going to be able to get him in some of these events still. He was kind of a fringe player for me when it came to total rank. Like, what is that? The 7?
I think he went in round 7 in ours. So pretty similar landing spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's good value for him there. It's not quite as great at the value that I got on Adam Scott, but look, at some point he could turn his game around, and I don't think he's been that bad this year. We've seen flashes from him recently. So like the ball striking's been good in a lot of these tournaments. The short game has kind of been hit and miss from when I ran my numbers with it, but I don't know. I don't love the Gary Woodland pick. I just thought it was a good value where I got him. And it's kind of a player I can shoot for upside. It's the same thing that I said with Adam Scott, more so like Scott there. But Woodland for me was ranked, just for full transparency, 73rd overall. So kind of at this point, I thought my league, as wild as it has been, kind of got average to where there weren't that many players left on the board. Like, I didn't see any glaring mistakes to be found. Like, nobody was inside my top 50 at this point, other than Will Gordon, who I took, and every other player was kind of in that 60 to 75 range. So I bet on Woodland being able to turn this around.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in any of those big events. I don't think he's going to be playing a lot of those average tournaments, and I think you can't go wrong with him, especially like you said, all your top guys were gone. This is the 10th round we're talking about. 50 guys have gone off the board already now, so there's a lot to be desired in that department. We're kind of getting through here, so let's get down to the nitty gritties of ours. Cameron Tringali, obviously a shout out there. We went with Lucas Herbert and Ben Martin in at the turn at 10-9 and 11-2, which as we could see, Abraham Answer went off in her column there again, which is always fun. But I love Herbert's got that random upside, man. Like, I don't know if he's going to be playing in random events, but we saw what he could get up to at the match play. And if he's going to give us a week like that at a normal non-elevated event, I'm totally fine. And I think Ben Martin is one of those guys that's just trending in the right direction, Joe. I know you can definitely account for Ben Martin there. What are your thoughts? All right, Joe, not in the mood to talk about Ben Martin.
Hey, I love Ben Martin, man. Ben Martin's my guy.
He likes him so much. He was just speechless.
Hey, Ben Martin was in the core 4 this week, boys. So I'm a Ben Martin fan.
Yeah, 72nd in the model.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, like specifically where you have him and where Joe thinks about him, I mean, you're getting value at where you guys are taking him. What is that, the 11th round?
Yeah, 11th round. I mean, you got 3 more picks after that, right? So, I mean, that's totally fine. I did want Tyler Duncan at some point, but we didn't quite get him to come back to us there. We are now what? You ended up taking Scott Stallings, not Steven Stallings, Scott Stallings, which is also, I mean, there's not much to talk about these guys here in the bottom, but if you have anything of significance from Scott, I think Ludwig Adberg is a lot more of a more discussable person than Scott Stallings. We all know what we kind of get from Scotty there. So chat to us about Ludwig.
Yeah, and just very quickly on the Stallings thing, like when I go Woodland and Stallings back to back there, and even with Scott above, I have so much veteran presence on this team at that point that I'm sitting there and there's very few golfers that I think possess the upside that Ludwig does. And I don't know, at some point he has to get through college, so I guess he's wrapping that up soon. We've seen him in his limited starts that he's had on the PGA Tour. He's looked really good, and he's the number 1 amateur in the world. So if you look at Akshay, like Akshay has kind of been one of these guys that has come out and has been really hot to start. And Akshay in our league went in the 7th round, and Ludwig is every bit as good of a golfer, if not a better golfer than Akshay. So I think he just needs reps at this point, and he needs to get into tournaments. And with his college experience ending here soon, and I know he's going to get into some of these events because of the number 1 status that he has with that new rule for the PGA Tour, that he's going to get that exemption into some of these events here.
We think he's going to turn pro, Spencer, after the majors?
I think he will turn pro as soon as the college experience is done for him, which I don't know exactly when that is, but like we're wrapping this up in, I think college is done in a month, isn't it, for the NCAA?
Yeah. I'm not sure if a lot of these guys, and they might be exempt for the Masters, they might be exempt for the U.S. Open or British Open, and they'll use those exemptions and then turn pro. I'm not sure where his status is on that. Having any trouble at all getting sponsors exemptions, and he might already kind of have something going with the PGA Tour U stuff. So
well, that's what I was saying. Is I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's the first recipient that is going to be able to get into all these events from being the number 1 player. So that's my thought, is like at this point of the draft, we're just throwing darts down here. And I can't think of a better dart to throw than Ludwig with the upside that he has.
Yeah.
Amen. And we discussed this as well offline. Is like at this point in the draft, it's all about upside because you're not going to be starting these guys every week. But if you can find a gem that could have, if you look in like 3 months' time, that probably would have gone inside the top 5. That's what you're looking for, yeah, right? Like
Exactly.
if one of these 5 guys hit, then you're money. Something really weird is happening in this column, yeah, where this guy that picked second picked Nikolai Hogard. And we picked him at the exact, like he's picked multiple people at the exact same time as we did. I don't know if he was like monitoring our draft or what, but we loved Nikolai Hogard here. I would have liked Mark Hubbard back on the turn there, but we landed up going with Patton Kazaya too, which I think are 2 very solid picks. Nikolai as well, one of those, we don't even really know what his availability is, but
Exactly.
we also, if he lands up finishing inside the top 10 this week, then he's in at RBC probably, or the week thereafter, right? Because that's all you need is a top 10 finish to like parlay some starts together, and then you're looking good. So, Joe,
22-year-old kid with just massive upside.
Yeah. It's like that's the 130th pick of the 129th pick of the draft.
Exactly.
Why not?
Yeah, I think we swung for the fences on our last 3 picks, and I really love it. Especially specifically talking about Hogard. Guys, I was very, very happy to get at this point in the draft. Hogard, the upside's huge. We've kind of seen that already on the DP World Tour, and with Cootie, we've seen it on the Corn Ferry Tour. Yeah. It's just a matter of it translating, and it only takes 1 week. I mean, you're drafting these guys at the end of the draft, tail end of the round, but they're the type of guys that could go out and win you a couple matchups in a fancy season long golf league. So. I love where we are there. I'm happy shooting for the upside because ours a player that's going to pop at a couple of tournaments that we have, in this stretch. Start talking about Harbortown, Sedgefield. I mean, there's some tracks that Kazire can pop. We've seen him win on the PGA Tour, so really like how we closed it out. I mean, everything's relative when you get to this point in the draft. You can go for safety. And I think in Byron and I's instance, we elected to go with upside here, and I was totally fine with that with the way the draft board shook out.
Yeah, Kazire's a nice upside target, and even if we look at the tournament this week, he rallied to make the cut, I believe. So, good for him. And I love what you guys did from Svensson down to the bottom.
We won't know what the cut is for another 3 days.
Well, that is true.
I know. Trying to write articles for this stuff has just been, it's like impossible. So
yeah,
it's ridiculous. 3-hour fog delay in Texas. Like what is going on? Global warming isn't happening though, so we won't go there. Garrick Hugo, Spence, is that what? No, you had Udberg and Simpson.
Of course, I took Webb Simpson. I mean, we knew that was coming.
Oh yes, dude.
I think in the 13th round here, he went in the 7th round in yours.
7th round,
which is probably a little bit on the extreme end, but it's once again, like, this is not the answer that I prototypically give either, but it's all these players. And well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe it is the answer that you would expect from me. I was on the Jason Day train for 5 years when he couldn't play golf. So I obviously get stuck in some of these older players of what they used to be, but the team chemistry I'm going to have, I can pair Webb back with Tesori. I have Cameron Young on that team. Like, they're going to all get together with that. That's going to be good. But I considered Eric Cole, which the funny part about that is I would have gone Cole, Len would have gone Cole, and the final team would have gone Cole. So I don't really know what happened there in our draft.
We have 2 Eric Coles go off for this back-to-back picks.
I mean, it was almost 3 Eric Coles in a row. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I think
I don't mind the Webb pick there, Spencer. I don't mind it at all, especially at that point in the draft. And you could almost view Webb almost like a live guy. You're going to get 4 or 5 really good places to play him. When you start talking about Harbortown, you start talking about Sedgefield, these courses where he's really been dominant. And he, I almost kind of just view him as a live guy, where they're going to be.
Like Joe cut out on me there, but the one thing that I'll say about that is at this point of the draft, even with we have 14 players on our team, We have 5 players that we're starting. It's really hard to find one of these guys that's going to get into your lineup in a lot of these situations. And there's specific events, as Joe was alluding to, that I will actually consider putting Webb in. And if for some reason he becomes anything close to what he used to be, now all of a sudden there's a lot of events that I could put him into. So I don't know if that's going to be the case there. And in my eyes, I wanted to go Webb, and then I was hoping to go Eric Cole to finish it. There wasn't enough Eric Coles on the board to finish that for me, but I took Kevin Yu with my final pick. He's one of those guys that hasn't played in a couple weeks just with the Corn Ferry Tour, and they rotate who gets into these events, but my model absolutely loves him from the limited sample size that I do have. I don't know when he's going to be able to get back into these events, but at the very minimum, it's a very easy droppable piece if I need to. And at the best case scenario, he gets back in very shortly and he makes a top 10 and he starts like running himself up, and I get a real player there. That, like, my model had him as a top 75 golfer. I just don't know if he gets enough starts to actually reach that level.
Yeah.
Be honest, Spitzer, how much consideration did you give Bubba Watson right there?
I mean, I don't know. Like,
I saw that Bubba Watson went off the board, so I had to figure out what was going on in that final round.
Well, I mean, what was going on in a lot of these rounds for me? Like, the one thing I will say about these final rounds, and like specifically for my team, I don't feel super comfortable. I know it's a 17-week season that we're talking about. I don't necessarily love my team for the Masters. It's kind of difficult for me to find 5 players. I have a Tom Kim problem that you could make an argument in the 3rd round. If I think Tom Kim is not a good fit, then all of a sudden I've already gone in the wrong direction there. Like Adam Scott is going to have to play for me, but like there's very little options that I wanted. So I did consider a live golfer at this point if there was one that I liked, but I don't know. Like I don't even want to play that game right now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you don't have an ace in the hole for those guys, then leave them alone. They're not giving the volume you need. So
to me, it was Cameron Smith, Dustin Johnson. I'm like generally okay with Answer and Neiman for this week, but like other than those 4, maybe Koepka, like I just don't have much intrigue in the live players.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy for us especially, but everyone in general, to kind of get tunnel vision on the Masters with it coming up.
Joe going through a tunnel.
Yeah. Joe's mic at the end of this has been in the wrong direction here.
It has been bad. I do want to mention though, Eric Cole, and then Cole Hammer in 3 consecutive picks is like what on earth just happened there? Did we have like an Inception situation, or it's just the hammer went to town? It was pretty funny, but thought I'd mention that. Joe, we cut you off there because you went through a tunnel and we lost you again. But do you want to try again? Tell us what you're thinking, boys. Or
just saying it's kind of easy to get tunnel vision on the Masters with where this draft fell. With maybe the biggest event of the year coming up next week, to draft right before that, it's easy to kind of get sucked into that tunnel vision on the Masters, and especially with us, kind of as content creators, all 3 of us, what we do every week is kind of laser focus on the task at hand, maybe rather than taking the long view. So this was a cool kind of different exercise for us, I think. I really enjoyed it. I really did. It's a lot of fun. So I hope it continues to grow. That's why, Spencer and I talked a lot about this and wanted to try to kind of make this thing happen. And I hope it grows, season-long fantasy golf, because it was a lot of fun today. And it's really cool because, when you're drafting fantasy football, every year you kind of have this, you kind of know where guys should go. And everything's pretty much in line. But like today, as we saw 2 boards that were vastly, vastly different. So it kind of makes it cool, as it's kind of new waters for everybody.
Yeah, there's a big edge to be had because of that if you're playing in leagues with friends. And obviously we're at a really weird time of the year right now where people aren't necessarily creating fantasy leagues, but there's still ability to do so if you do want to play. Fantrax hosts really good leagues over there. If you want to go through and create a league for yourself, you check out Fantrax. They're good guys over there, and I like the product that they put out.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I had a blast chatting with everyone, meeting, and we also got it, like, as professionals in this space, or professionals, like experts. We had a good time meeting other fellow people in our industry, and made some friends today too. We had a really fun time in our Zoom call, and it was just fun had by all. Lots of good laughs, and we had to take a photo where Brad had to, like, lean all the way back so he could get his hair in the frame because his hair is, like, always sticking out the top of his thing. It was just great times.
You guys seem like you had a much more engaging group than my group. We didn't do much talking in ours. We were in, like, full poker mode where everybody had their hoodie on. We had sunglasses. Nobody wanted to give anything away, which, I mean, I guess that's me playing competitions in a nutshell.
That's pretty surprising considering some of those pics I saw in there.
I think the hoodies were on too much. They were, the guys.
But yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
We had a great group, man. Yeah, I mean, I think there was chatter throughout. I don't think it ever actually stopped. It was really fun. So
yeah,
a cool new experience, and something I definitely recommend to everyone. I had a great time with Byron, even though I'm gonna have to own the Taylor Montgomery thing probably for the rest of the year.
If he goes and becomes, like, world number one, Joe, it's going to be the best decision we've ever made. But we'll see how it goes. It was a great time. I had a blast. Any parting words, anything like that from either of you?
I guess I'll say one thing, and I'll give a shameless plug to all of us here. If you're not doing so already, be sure to check out what we have going on over at the Rotoballer part of the site. We obviously have great free articles that all of us do. On top of that, we have a premium section that I know all of us put all our blood, sweat, and tears into it every single week. You can find Byron's model. You can find my model. You can find my Vegas report Joe puts out. I'll let you have your core 4 in there if you guys want to say some of the things that you guys do. But it's a really good value in the space that we have. I think it's a cheap price compared to most of the rest of the industry. And like I always say, at least in my way, and I know you guys are the same way with it, I'm always about trying to teach rather than tout plays. And the nice thing about what we do is we still give picks to everybody. Like, we're going to give you our selections for the week, but we're also going to give you tools to be able to then make your own selection. So you get the best of all worlds with that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure we could have said it much better than that, Spence. And I love the 3, and as you've seen in this pod, like, you're getting 3 totally different opinions and perspectives on the same golfer across the board from all 3 of us. So if you're having a tough time narrowing down your choice, we're most likely going to have spoken about the same guy at some point throughout our stuff, and I think that's a great element of having the 3 of us as, like, this nice little 3-pronged attack that we've got there over at Rotoballer. So yeah, go wherever you like. Use code Maniac, use code TOFF, use nicely. Get yourself 10% off on everything there. We got weekly, annual, the whole shebang. And yeah, that's been fun. It was fun hanging out with you boys. It's something we need to do more often, but we're always so busy pumping out the best content in the industry. So that's something we can't quite do too much. But thanks for tuning in. I've seen lots of people pop in here. It was fun to see Cameron Tringali show face, and it was a fun pod. So till next time, we'll be coming in hot and heavy with some master stuff here once the week starts, and we'll catch you guys next week.